The definition of firepower is the capacity to deliver effective fire on a target. In order to deliver effective firepower, one must dedicate time and energy to become proficient. The definition of resilience is the ability to recover from or adjust to misfortune or change. Resilient people ask for help when they need it. This is a documentary about firepower resilience. The goal is to help first responders know what to do if they are hurting. The goal is also to empower other clinicians to develop models that work for first responders. Ultimately, my goal is to give our first responders hope. My name is Tania Glenn, and I'm a therapist that works with public safety veterans and their family members. I've dedicated my entire career to working with this population, and I absolutely love every day that I go to work. To me, it's not a job, it's a passion, it's a career, and it's a mindset. My history is that in graduate school, I was about 3 months away from finishing my master's degree, and I went home one day and I watched the Branch Davidian compound and the ATF standoff in Waco, Texas. I couldn't believe what was happening, and I knew that day my calling was to go to work for public safety, to go to places like Waco and help people like the ATF. I went to school the next day and I told my professors that I was going to do that, and they told me I was crazy. So I said, watch me. And I've never looked back. My history includes I was in Oklahoma City after the Murrah bombing in 1995. I was 26 years old. That was my first disaster. I learned a lot from it, and I've carried those lessons forward. I went up to New York after 9/11. I spent 3 weeks in Hurricane Katrina. I went to Dallas when the officers were killed in 2016, and I went to Fort Lauderdale in the aftermath of an active shooter in the airport. My forte is to be boots on the ground and to bring a calm and presence of healing and hope to all first responders that I interact with. The first program I ever created was actually with Austin Travis County EMS. I was working in a level 2 trauma center smack dab in the middle of Austin. I was doing my weekend night shift. And what I would do every Thursday night in order to turn my schedule back over to nights is I would go ride along, police, fire, EMS.
So it's important to go on ride-alongs because there are such distinct cultures and mentalities that are present in the different departments. When you go on a ride-along, it allows you to see it in action and to understand their language, their codes, their abbreviations a lot more. So we can work with them a little bit more effectively. So we go to customer events for a similar reason as to why we go on ride-alongs. So it allows us to see another side of the culture that comes in being in these populations. So we go to things like Corporal Chat fundraisers, Vet Fest, Police Week, and we're even the finish line cheerleaders at a local annual 5K. It allows us to talk about the work that we do and just gets to support the population that we love working with.
And what I noticed is that they were really, really burnt out. They were struggling with a lot of trauma, a lot of terrible calls, and there was nothing in place that they trusted. I started to talk to them about their EAP and their health insurance, and what they told us very quickly is that they didn't trust that process. With a diagnosis attached to your name and a paper trail potentially destroying a career, no one wanted to take that risk. So what I did in October of 1993 is I approached the directors at Austin Travis County EMS, and I outlined the problems. I talked about burnout, I talked about trauma, and I talked about how nobody was going to utilize the services that they had basically been provided all this time. So I said to them, what I want to do is I want to do a third type of option, and it's a contract. It'll be with my practice, which specializes with first responders. And I told them that I would submit an invoice once a month, and there would be no names on the invoice, just numbers. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, well, obviously you have to trust my ethics in billing, but there's no amount of money that is ever worth my career. And so the leadership at the time said, well, we like your idea, but there's no money. And I said to them, all right, so I'm going to do it for free until you decide you can't live without it, because otherwise I know you're just going to forget about this. And so I did it for free for 3 years. Every month I turned in my statistics, how many paramedics and communication specialists and EMTs that I saw. And at the end of 3 years, they're like, all right, uncle, here's your first contract. And that was the first of its kind. So I was trained very early on in 1995 in eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which I consider to be the biggest tool we have in our toolbox to conquer trauma. What we do typically is we couple EMDR with something called progressive desensitization. So if we have an officer involved in a shooting who's been traumatized, we EMDR the shooting, then we go out to the fire range. Or what we do sometimes is we take a paramedic, and maybe they were involved in a serious collision. So we'll do EMDR, and then we'll go get in the ambulance and we'll drive through the intersection where the wreck happened 50, 60, 70 times if they need to. And what that does is it basically hands their brain the 1-2 punch of conquering those traumas. They get their lives back, they get their careers back, and it's amazing to watch how quickly they heal. Then we wanted to take things a step further. The first responders that you're going to see in this documentary, they all had rapid, immediate intervention with peer support programs, and then rapid, immediate intervention at our practice. And what we started to notice is that we could actually get in quickly and mitigate and really possibly prevent the onset of post-traumatic stress disorder. I call it firepower resilience because I truly believe that this is the most effective way to mitigate trauma in our first responders. So I'm excited to bring you guys this documentary. You can hear straight from our first responders just how quickly they bounced back and recovered.
My name's Wesley Hensley. I'm currently a major for the Texas Attorney General's Criminal Investigation Division here in Austin.
Investigators say it all started around 12:50 this morning when they were serving him a search warrant. There were 5 investigators with the Attorney General's office along with 2 Harris County Sheriff's deputies. Immediately they were engaged with gunfire. 3 of those investigators were shot. That includes 2 of them from the Attorney General's office, 1 from the Harris County Sheriff's office.
We were making entry and you always go to the first open door. Nothing was in there except for bed and stuff like that. And I looked over to my left where there was another doorway which was open. So I kind of pushed the door a little bit and it kept hitting someone. It kept hitting the sink. And I didn't see anybody behind there. So I come up and then there's a wall right here. And I come up with my gun and I see the shower where the shower curtain is about halfway open. And I'll never forget, I came up with my gun going, just real slowly, and I'm coming up and I reach for the shower curtain. Right when I pull that shower curtain back, point blank, Daniel shoots me. And he shoots me in the face right here. I hit the ground and I hear more gunshots going off. I couldn't feel my arms. I couldn't feel my hands. My leg was killing me. I didn't know what was going on. I said, I got to get out of here. I said, I've got to go. I got to see my wife and kids. and I remember worst feeling ever. I looked down when I forced my eyes open. I looked down and I looked in my hand and going, my gun's gone. It's not there. I remember shutting my eyes again. I thought, well, I'll have to play dead because he was still above me. I could feel the brass hitting me while he was shooting. And so I closed my eyes and just laid there still as I could and prayed and prayed and prayed. I told God, I said, if it's my time to go home, then take me home. And I guess the human side came out of me and I started to beg and plead with him. I said, this is going to devastate my family. I said, my wife and kids need me. The shooting stopped. There was a peace and quiet. It's to this day, I still don't know how to explain it. And I hear Wesley get up. And I popped up off that ground because, like I said, I don't know how I got up. I always say it's the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, and a couple of angels probably lifted me up off that ground. And I started out of the bathroom. And when I do, I come out. Well, Daniel steps out. And he steps out and he's got 2 guns in his hand. And one of the guns is my gun. It's in his right hand. And he's standing there and we're kind of face to face almost. And he's got these guns held out and I'm standing like right here. And he has this most dumbfounded look on his face when he sees me standing there. I was supposed to be dead. I looked at him and I was sitting there going, okay, I can't do anything. I don't have a gun. I can't kill him right now. What am I going to do? I said, I got a pocket knife in my right pocket. So I'll reach in there, grab my pocket knife, and I'll cut him. Whatever I do, I was going to survive. And then I got to thinking, I can't use my hands. I couldn't feel them, and I couldn't move them. So I was like, okay, that's not going to work. And then the last thing I thought of, I said, well, here it goes. I just started talking to him. I said, hey, man, I said, how about I go outside and I call everybody off. You go your way, we go our way. So I need to get help, and we'll finish this some other time. And while I'm doing that, talking to him, and I just trying to make conversation with the guy, just something. And I'm moving around him the whole time. And so I get around him, and at the last second, I say, listen, I'm going to step outside and get a breath of fresh air. How about that? Are you good with that? And then it dawned on him, at the time, he goes, he goes, get on your fucking knees. And I knew he was going to kill me. So I broke and ran. He chased me. Well, this time he shoots me again. And he shoots me with my pistol. And the one shot hits me in the right butt cheek. And he shoots me 4 more times in the groin area. One of the officers that was at the very rear of the house starts opening fire into the house. It scared Daniel enough to run back into the house where he left me alone. And I rolled over in my stomach. And I dug my elbows into that concrete and bear crawled out of there.
They were all immediately taken to the hospital. One is undergoing surgery right now. Fortunately, though, all of their injuries are considered non-life threatening.
I was always uncomfortable, couldn't sleep very well. And you got to understand, both my arms were covered in bandages, so I could not do anything for myself. Our agency, we had an in-service training that we have every year. And so they've reached out to Dr. Glenn, and you came in and talked about our wellness, and it was really good. And so I knew about that. I knew what you did for our office.
One of the very important elements of what we do is training. I jokingly say that we're not going to talk about the F word, which is feelings. We talk about the other one, but not feelings. What we talk about is fight or flight. We link it to the 4 types of stress. We talk about resilience. We talk about solutions. We talk about EMDR. We talk about PTSD mitigation. And what happens at the end of that is our clients know if they're okay, and they know if maybe they're not okay. And a lot of folks from that education who realize they're not okay, they call. They know how to reach us, and they call and they reach out and they get help.
When I was in the hospital, the nightmares started. And what I mean, I would wake up and I wasn't sleeping. And then when I did go to sleep, I would have nightmares. I'd see his eyes. I remember that, when I pulled the curtains back on the shower, that's the first thing I saw was a white in bad guy's eyes that day. And I would see that in my head constantly. I would hear the gunshots go off. And it would scare me so much that I'd wake up screaming. I kept saying, I told my wife, I said, there's something not here. There's something not right here. I need help. I said, get Dr. Glenn here as fast as she can. And you showed up December 24th, Christmas Eve, which is really awesome that you showed up on Christmas Eve. And you came in and you took control and you kicked everybody out of my room. And I'm laying there looking at you like, what the hell is she doing? So
The way I remember it is I walked in Wes's room and he kicked everybody out. I don't remember kicking everybody out. I remember Wes saying, my therapist is here, everybody out. And I'll tell you, I pulled the curtain, and I have never done EMDR in somebody in a hospital bed, but I leaned over him and I'm like, look at my fingers.
But we went through, you spent a couple hours with me, I think. We got done, and it was just a weight lifted off of me. It took it from here and put it back here. It wasn't on my mind every day when I wake up or anything like that. I could pull out certain things. I could tell everybody. And after you did that to me, it was like, oh, wow, this stuff really works. It works great. And I tell everybody about that. I
think the most significant part of Wes's EMDR was the reprocessing. Wes kept saying, Tania, I lost control. I lost control. He had my gun. I lost control. And through walking through step by step what happened in that house and the dynamics between him and this individual, what I quickly realized is that Wes never lost control. And when I pointed that out to him, here's this individual saying, get on your fucking knees. And basically Wes told him to fuck off, and he left. And when I pointed that out, it's like this light went on in his mind. And he's like, well, damn right. And I was like, there you go. And so it was this magical moment that I knew as soon as we reprocessed it and I could help him see it in a different way, I knew he was going to be fine.
And I remember my chief walking in there and he had my badge in his hand. And it was still on the chain. I wore that badge that day with my vest, but I threw it over as kind of a necklace and it kind of hung down here. And I remember looking at my badge going, oh my, I messed that badge up. There's all kinds of scratches and scrapes, and it was scraping along the concrete floor while I was bear crawling out of there. And I said, it's nice and bright and shiny because they cleaned all the blood off of it. And I thought to myself, I said, that's just like me. I said, I'm scratched up and dented, that kind of stuff, but I can still shine and like my badge. So that was awesome.
My name is Megan Burke, and I originally was a paramedic in the city of Flint, Michigan. My husband got a job down here in Texas, and that's when I started being in communications.
Any available units start towards the area of Robin Bledsoe Park. Reports of a 3-year-old.
My career changed March 31st at 2:43 in the morning. I'll never forget that date and time. It is forever burned in my memory.
First here at 6 o'clock, Leander police now say a woman found dead early on Wednesday morning was one of their own.
And the person charged with murder is her own son. Dispatcher Rowena Spite was stabbed to death at a home off Hero Way West. Her 19-year-old son, Miles Spite, is behind bars. Investigators say his grandmother called 911 after she awoke to screaming.
I answered the phone and I could hear just screaming. In the screams, I recognized Rowena's mom's voice. And the only thing that I could think of was to get her attention, so I called her mom because that's how I knew her, And in that second, she came back and I said, it's Megan. It's Megan Burke from the center. And she goes, Rowena's dead. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. My best friend's mom had just said that she was dead. And I was like, no, this is something wrong. Like, was there a medical? And she said, no, her son had killed her. I mean, Rowena was the cornerstone of our department, and she just didn't know it. Like, that's what our supervisors kept saying. She was that one person that everyone could count on. She was that cornerstone, and she just didn't even know how important she was. Like, my entire life shifted. My mom passed away, and Rowena stepped in, and filled that void for me and my daughter. When they said she was not viable, those two words, not viable, and to hear them over the radio said, like, you always have hope. Like, you're listening to these calls and you always have hope, because EMS got sent and the guys were there and they were doing everything that they could. And then when they said that she wasn't viable, like, all right, it's time. It's time to put your boots on and we can be sad later. And I remember I said, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving until he's found. I'm not leaving. And I didn't. I came back the next night because I didn't want my team to have to touch it yet. I came back in because I was good. I was good because as a dispatcher, you leave all of it at the door. And that's something that has always been, a thing. You leave your emotions, you leave your humanity, you leave that at the communications door so that you can help other people. So you have a clear head, so you are able to focus on the job that you have to do, taking care of the community. I went on like nothing had happened. I tried to maintain a normalcy, and I was trying to just distance myself from like my family, just kind of just be. I just needed to be. Well, my husband, he's a firefighter and they don't listen too well, so he drugged me to Georgetown to pick up the kids' Easter baskets. And I remember being so angry, and I didn't even understand why. I was so angry, like, it's Easter for our kids. I didn't think anything about it. He says, "You're really scaring me." I was like, I'm in trouble, right? I'm in trouble. Like, I couldn't get the screaming out of my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her screaming. I knew to avoid the police department Friday night at 6 o'clock because Tania was going to be there, and I'm good. I was good. I was really good. I was fine. I didn't need that. I was good, right? But I had gone to pick up dinner for my family, and I realized the next day that I needed some paperwork from the police department that I had printed out. And I thought that I had waited long enough. I grabbed my paperwork, and Tania is like a heat-seeking missile for trauma. As soon as I saw Tania, I knew I was in trouble because I just lost it. I was crying.
And I was talking to her, and what I noticed is that she was shaking and she was dry heaving. And so I know she knows where my office is, but I handed her a card. And I was like, "So I will see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And she's like, "Okay." And, it was just that simple. And so I was so glad when she came in. She honored her commitment.
I remember thinking, this is a bunch of crap. I remember I'm going to sit on this couch because they're making me sit on this couch. And she's going to do some hocus pocus magic, and none of this is going to matter. I'm going to walk out feeling the same way that I felt before. I'm not going to sleep. A clarity fell over me, a calm clarity. The questions that she asked, I was able to pull back the curtain. That's how I describe it. With the EMDR, you're able to open that curtain and explore the trauma without. The nausea had gone away, and I was able to make sense of it. Like I said, I thought it was a bunch of crap in the beginning, but there's calm and peace and answers that you find you had all along, but you needed help to get to that moment of clarity. And that's what EMDR provides.
And Megan told me that she blamed herself, that she felt like she couldn't do her job because when she realized it was Rowena's mom, her voice cracked. And that's what trauma does to you. It's horrible, and all these nasty messages get logged in the frontal lobe of your brain, and then the awful message gets wrapped around it. And Megan's was, I didn't do my job. So I knew right away we needed to do EMDR. After the first set of eye movements, she stopped dry heaving. After the second set, she stopped shaking. And after the third set, she looked at me and she goes, "Oh my God." And I said, "What?" She goes, "I just realized I did my job." Absolutely. That's how fast and effective it was. And that was our launching point for all the amazing stuff we've been working on in terms of her resilience.
And so during our weekly therapy sessions, Tania didn't always tell me everything that I wanted to hear. It wasn't always flowers and sunshine and rainbows. It was truth. It was, I needed to get back in the gym. And so that seemed overwhelming to me, that suggestion that she had. And so I started out small. I started out opening my curtains every day. And then after I opened my curtains every day, I found that I made my bed every day. And that made me feel good. Then I started going to the gym every shift. And my mindset changed. I'm stronger, both mentally and physically, because of therapy and going to the gym and making my bed and positive habits that come out of, well, you're not always right, Megan. Not everything works the way that you want it to. So being peer support is a gift that we've been given from Tania. it allows us to help others that are going through the yuck. You know, we're part of the team when it comes to meeting the needs of our officers, our dispatchers. You know, anybody who reaches out for help, for peer support, it's confidential, you know, and it helps a lot. It really does.
One of the things that I've noticed over the years is the absolute benefit of having peer support programs. My practice actually oversees and trains multiple peer support teams, and we actually consider them an extension of our practice.
We have peer support teams locally. We have, across the state and nationally. And basically their main role is they're the psychological first aid for the first responders out there. I mean, they're there at the scene to check in on everybody, see how everything's going. They're in the stations to see how people are reacting after calls or events. So really they're in there in a way that we can't be. And just looking out for their own people. And it's a great one-on-one peer support.
Our peer support teams do amazing things with our customers, and honestly, about 8 out of 10 of our patients say to us when they call for help, they always say, peer support told me to call you. And because peer support told me to call you, I'm making the call. So having peer support programs working in conjunction, hand in hand with our team of clinicians has been an absolute win. I don't know how we would do this without our peer support programs.
My name is Jared Reeves. I am with the Cedar Park Fire Department. I've been there for just over 8 years now. I'm also a medic with the Central Texas Regional SWAT Team. I have been there since their inception in 2015, and I'm now currently their team leader for the medics. We were having our normal day and we got a call for a possible structure fire at a commercial building. So we made our way to the scene. En route, they told us that the fire was out, that the workers there had put it out. It was a fire on a roof. They were putting tar on a commercial building and it had caught fire. So what they wanted us to do as soon as we got there was get up on the roof and do a roof report, just inspect everything, make sure that it was actually out and that there wasn't going to be a risk of a flare up again. So my lieutenant went down first, no problems. Next firefighter went down, no problems. So there was nothing in my head that made me think, hey, this is going to be anything but just getting down a ladder. I put one foot on the ladder, everything was fine. I reached across and put my second foot on the ladder, and then something happened. Everything just felt like it kind of shifted underneath me. At the time, what I didn't realize is that a section of the wall had broken out from under me. Wasn't anything big, just a 6-inch section of the wall. But that was enough to bounce the ladder, and on extension ladders, they're very, very flexible in the middle. So when I hit, it was enough to bounce me off of the ladder.
Dispatch from Engine 12. We have an emergency. We can need EMS.
I was at my feet. I was at 17 feet. I started to try and reach out for anything that I possibly could grab. I grabbed a section of the wall. That section of the wall then proceeded to break from under me. I could see the ground coming, and I didn't see, because of my perspective, I guess, that there was a 4-inch round PVC pipe that was 3 foot straight up, standing straight up. And so in my head, I was expecting, there's the ground, here it's coming, get ready. And then I hit something. My legs then scorpioned over the back of my head, and I ended up kind of rolling into this fetal position in a hole and just started screaming. I spent the next 3-ish months starting to try and recover. Chiropractors, urologist, physical therapist. When that part of the recovery process stopped, I started to notice that things weren't right. My wife had been mentioning for a little while, like, hey, are you okay? I'm starting to worry about you getting depressed. I'm concerned that you need to go see somebody. When I started having other guys in that apartment say, hey, something's wrong. I finally made the decision to come and talk to y'all, talk to your office. I made the phone call and set up an appointment and started working through the process of trying to figure out that, one, it's okay, that I'm gonna be okay. I'm here. Everything is fine in the whole scheme of things, but let's start working towards a semblance of normal.
So I created this culture that is designed to give the best customer service possible. We welcome our patients rapidly, and we give honest, effective, good treatment as diligently as we can. We interface with our customers on their best and worst days.
So our philosophy is that we want to make sure that when people call us, that they know that they've made the right call and that they have like a sense of relief and that they know that they're going to be taken care of. Our philosophy is that we are going to call you at, if you're in crisis, we're going to return your call as soon as we possibly can. We're not going to wait 24 to 72 hours to return that call. We're going to call you as soon as possible. We're going to get you in as soon as possible.
I can very clearly remember the first set thinking, there's no way this is going to work. This is silly. I don't understand. And then click. And stuff started bouncing all over the place. Stuff that I necessarily didn't think that I was hurting from. Things that I thought that I was okay with, I very much wasn't. And that first EMDR session, I can remember getting done with it, one, being physically exhausted, but feeling lighter, if that makes sense. The therapist told me, hey, I want to try something with you. And previously, I couldn't get on a ladder. If I stepped foot on a ladder, then I would have a panic attack almost immediately. We keyed in pretty quickly that I was having problems sitting back down. Because of my back and my groin injuries, that I was heavily guarding myself every single time when I went to go sit down. And he said, hey, I want you to stand up for me. I said, okay. He's like, I need you to trust me because this is gonna seem wrong. But I want you to sit halfway down, and as you're sitting down, I want you to kind of fall into the chair. And in my head, I'm like, oh, hell no. This is going to be bad. And I put my faith in somebody else, and I did it, and it was gone. And it was this, I knew what was supposed to be there, and there was this feeling like, what the heck? Why? That's awesome. And then he said, okay, I need you to do it one more time, but I want you to stand up fully, and I want you to just fall straight back into the chair. And having a little more confidence in it, I did it, and still nothing. It was a massive, massive relief to do something as simple as sit back down and not have this fear that I'm gonna keep falling. I've now moved towards the peer support side of everything. And I'm realizing that what I went through and the things that I've experienced and the treatments that I've had, it gives me I feel like a little bit different perspective on, I know what I went through is not going to be the same as what you went through, but it's going to be okay. We're going to get through it. It's okay to feel the way you're feeling. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have now is we have this history of trying to feel like we're firefighters or we're police officers. We have to get through this. We're supposed to be there when everybody else is not okay and be this symbol of just general sturdiness. We're not. We're not okay. We train. We spend our entire, essentially, career training to get over the worst possible calls that we can. But when it's us, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's okay. We'll be all right. And I think that with peer support, with actively seeking therapy, we can make the effort to actually help each other and say, okay, we can be okay. We are going to be okay. But we have to respond just like any other call that we respond to. We have to respond in the appropriate manner.
One of my favorite things about Jared's story is the post-traumatic growth that he achieved. So post-traumatic growth is when you heal and you turn around and you look at experiences and you say, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but it's made me better, stronger, and wiser. And that's typically 95% of our peer support teams, is people who've faced adversity, who've been through incredibly difficult situations. And what they want to do is they want to turn around and pay it forward to others so that they don't have to suffer as they did. And so it's amazing to watch this post-traumatic growth concept happen. And it just creates, I think, the best employees you could ever ask for.
My name is Brandy Beers, and I work for AirVac Life Team out of Oklahoma. So it was around 9:30 in the morning, and we got our first set of tones. And when we got there, it was like, oh.
In a matter of seconds, Eddie Garcia was trapped by a toppled crane. He was pinned nearly 4 hours. First responders tried everything to get him out.
And so with the local EMS group, we just started taking care of the patient. It's really hard to see someone that you know in that moment, everyone who's there, their life is gonna change because they just couldn't get the patient free. We get notice that, hey, there's a surgeon coming. The surgeon got there, and it was just, at that point, you're like, phew, like, all right, we're gonna have to start making some decisions. And you know, it's very possible in order to save this life, we might have to take his legs. They brought in another crane, and they had another one that was coming in, but they just couldn't get the crane off. They just couldn't. And the things that they were doing, they just couldn't get the patient's legs free. So we got to a point where it was getting time where we know evidence base shows that after a certain period of time, the likelihood of survival, if you don't make a decision, your patient's outcomes decrease. So we made the decision as a team. It was all people on board, because the people who, nobody wanted to see a man lose his legs. No one ever wants to do that to anyone. We did everything and anything that we could possibly do to make it so that patient was comfortable. And then we just started doing what we needed to do. It was very difficult because I'm a nurse and I do what I do to save lives and try to save people, and being part of taking someone's ability to walk away when he was perfectly healthy and happy and able to move was so hard to do. But if we didn't do it, he was gonna die. And so we did it. Life doesn't return back to normal after you do something like this. You think that you can just do it. Like, you'll talk about it, you'll suck it up, and you'll go on. That's not how it works. Since that call, I couldn't sleep. And I would sleep for a couple hours, and I would wake up to screaming in my head, and just imagery of the things that we had done and thoughts about the scene. So I let my PD know. I said, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. He put me in touch, they call it the peer team, and they said, we're gonna hook you up with Tania Glenn, and we're gonna get you the help that you need. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I don't even know, like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? And so he said, listen, he's like, you go, you do what she says, and he's like, you'll feel better, I promise. So when Tanya called me, she said, I have this option for you. It's EMDR. And I was like, I don't know exactly what EMDR is, but it can't make anything worse, obviously. So I'm game. And we made plans, and off to Austin I went.
And so I was able to really just educate her and normalize what she was going through. And what that did is it told her that she was normal, but it also told her that it would be a good idea to get help. I actually described EMDR to her on the phone, and she said, whatever it is, I'll do it. Whatever, if you can just take this out of my head, I'll do this. So she came down and we went to work.
You will do anything at that point, because if I didn't get help, this probably would have ended my career as a flight nurse. She sat across from me and just asked me questions and talked to me and walked me through things and explained that as we did the EMDR, that it might bring up other underlying things, and you just had to let your brain go wherever it wanted to. And what I realized was that this event wasn't necessarily this caused me to feel the way I did, but there were lots of other things that I had seen and that I had done that made this one so powerful in my head. And we went through the entire thing, just kind of like making it better. And when we got to a sticking point, we would stop, and then we would go back and we would address it again and walk more through things. You almost feel relief in that moment because it's not sitting like right here. That was amazing for me, to not have nightmares and to not wake up hearing screaming in my head.
At the end of Brandy's treatment, there was this one thing that she couldn't quite get past. And she kept saying, I took someone's legs. I took someone's legs. And what I explained to her is that's what we call a moral injury. It's when you can't swoop in and save the day. The outcome is not, perfect. And I was talking to her about that, and she understood that. But there was this missing piece that I detected. And I sometimes get really creative in my therapy with our first responders. And I said to her, I said, you know what? I don't know anybody in the industry who's had this experience. So I can't even reach out to someone who does what you do and be like, hey, can you talk to Brandy? But I do know a guy named Shannon Burke. And Shannon was a Navy corpsman, and he was in Fallujah. And so I called Shannon and I said, Shannon, I know you're in Fallujah. I know you did a lot of things. I know you saw a lot of things. And probably half of it you haven't even talked about yet. But here's what I have. I have a flight nurse, and here's what happened. And he said, send her to me. And about 2 weeks later, I get a message from Brandy, and she's like, I talked to Shannon, and it really put the period at the end of the sentence. She said, I am good now. I am good with the decisions that I had to make, and it was great to talk to him. So here you have two individuals, really different experiences, but I knew based on the things that Shannon had done and had experienced that he was perfect for Brandy. And so I was really, really glad to connect the two.
So every day is just a better day. And every day I'm getting back to being the me that I was. And now I know that you need to speak up, and you need to ask, and you need to talk, and you need to fight for yourself, because it's not weakness to say that you're not okay. That's strength, because we don't do that in our field. We don't ask for help. We help others, but it's strength. And I am proud of myself because I wasn't ashamed or afraid, and I did the things that they told me, and it's so much better.
When I set out to create my own practice, I really focused on the culture. To me, the culture was the most important thing. I wanted to create an environment that first responders would feel comfortable getting help. The most important thing is that they ask for help and that they receive good help. When I advertise for therapist positions with my team, this is definitely a thick skin, right personality kind of therapist that fits this bill. I seek out people who have the ability to jump in the midst of a crisis and run with it, and think on their feet and really activate in situations that are not super comfortable and just thrive on that.
We see vicarious trauma in our family members. We see family members taking on some of the same symptoms that the first responder has, taking on the grief, the anxiety, the fear. We see this in children as well. So it's important that family members also get help, because a lot of times we treat the first responders because they've experienced this traumatic event, but it's also affected family members. So where the first responder may have received treatment and EMDR and may be doing well, their significant other family is still back at the starting line, still experiencing this trauma, and it's so important for them to also receive help so the family can move forward as a whole.
In looking back at my career, I realized that the first time I actually used firepower resilience was in Oklahoma City after the bombing at the Murrah Federal Building. I was 26 years old, and we were up in Oklahoma City 2 weeks later after the bombing, and we were working with police, fire, and EMS. Basically, my first EMDR patient was an Oklahoma City firefighter, and this was 2 weeks after my training. My first day of training was the day of the Oklahoma City bombing. And 2 weeks later, I find myself sitting across from this firefighter, and he told me that he ran into what was left of the Murrah building, and he found what was left of the daycare, and he was not okay. And I proceeded to tell him about this new technique, and we hadn't really studied it yet, so we don't know why it works, but we know it works. And I said, I had it done on me during training, and he's like, Tanya, I'll do anything. I watched this transformation. And I didn't realize it at the time that this was firepower resilience until many, many years into my career, where I really started to develop this model for immediate crisis intervention and making sure that people bounce back. But what an honor it was to do that quickly on someone with that kind of trauma. And when I look back, I think about what a gift he gave me of trust and allowing me to do this brand new technique on him. And it was just amazing. Because he was my first, I actually followed him through his whole career, and he retired a few years ago with zero problems. I actually met his niece I was doing a training for the Austin Police Department families, and his niece was there, and I was describing the situation, and afterwards she came up to me and she said, Tanya, that's my uncle. And she told me his name, and I was like, and she said, he has talked about you for years. He's been talking about this gal Tanya who came up from Texas, and he used to say that I fixed his eyes. And I was like, actually, I fixed his brain. And she said, yes, you did. And that's how we started. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this documentary on firepower resilience. I have certainly had an amazing career, and I am super thrilled to bring you this amazing lineup of first responders. And hopefully what happens with this is some first responders realize that there's hope, and they realize that there's ways to create protocol for good, proactive, and competent care. So I thank you all for everything you do. Take care.
So maybe I'm the one that needed saving, someone to rescue me from myself, and now the memories are slowly fading. Wish I could see me through the eyes of someone else. And I remember the look in your eyes when you